believe that the state has proven to their satisfaction beyond a reasonable doubt, one, that Baldwin discharged the firearm during the production of the movie without first verifying the firearm contained no live ammo and while the firearm was pointed in the direction of another. That's the underlying conduct that the state's alleging. That's right from what they read to the grand jury. And that's the appropriate fill in the blanks for the first element here. Two, that Baldwin should have known of the danger involved by Baldwin's actions. So he knew he was handling a real gun. He knew he was pointing a real gun at Helena Hutchins. He knew he didn't check to make sure there was no live ammo in that gun. Three, that Baldwin acted with a willful disregard for the safety of others. Again, it's basically the same element. He knew he was handling a real gun and pointing a real gun at Helena Hutchins without ensuring he had not loaded the gun. We also know he cocked the hammer and pressed the trigger. Four, that Baldwin's act caused the death of Hutchins. Well, this is beyond dispute, and this happened in New Mexico on or about the day of October 21st, 2021. Again, beyond dispute. So two things. First is, I think the evidence is incontestable that all of these elements have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, even before Baldwin's trial starts. And these are the only relevant elements, folks. This is all the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt under actual New Mexico law. The other thing is, this is the actual jury instruction. So the defense proposed an alternative jury instruction that would have required that Alec Baldwin actually knew there was a live round in the gun when he pointed it at Helena Hutchins and cocked the hammer and pressed the trigger. Folks, if he actually knew there was a live round in the gun, that would be a different crime. That would be murder. He's not charged with murder. He's charged with involuntary manslaughter. That he acted negligently in the handling of a firearm when he failed to ensure it did not contain live ammo, and he pointed the gun at Helena Hutchins, and he cocked the hammer and pressed the trigger. Collectively, that is the recklessness sufficient for a conviction on involuntary manslaughter. So the Baldwin desired jury instruction is that Baldwin discharged a firearm during the production of a movie, and the target, Baldwin, should have known the danger involved from the target's action. Frankly, I think the evidence supports this jury instruction as well, but the defense is reading their own jury instruction as requiring that Baldwin was actually aware there was a live round in the gun. If that were true, we'd have a murder case here, not a manslaughter case. This is the actual New Mexico jury instruction. What the defense proposed is just something they made up. Now, does it matter how the live round got in the gun? Not according to the New Mexico Supreme Court. Does it matter that David Halls didn't adequately check? Does it matter that that Hannah Gutierrez, the armorer, was the human being who apparently loaded the live round into the gun? Certainly she handed a gun with a live round onto the set. I mean, it matters for their own criminal liability. It does nothing to diminish Baldwin's criminal liability because under State v. Gilliam, New Mexico Supreme Court, quote, it could have made no difference to the trial of a charge of involuntary manslaughter as to who loaded the gun. All that is necessary to establish for involuntary manslaughter by the use of a loaded firearm is that a defendant had in his hands a gun which at some time had been loaded and that he handled it without due caution and circumspection, and that death resulted. Baldwin pointing what he knew to be a real gun at Helena Hutchins and cocking the hammer and pressing the trigger without ensuring there was not a live round in the gun obviously meets this standard. If he had to point the gun at his own head, you think he would have personally made sure there was no live ammo in that gun? For sure, for sure. So the relevant legal question is what's stated here in the jury instruction. That Baldwin discharged a firearm during the production of the movie without first verifying the firearm contained no live ammo, and while the firearm was pointed in the direction of another, in this case, Helena Hutchins, that he should have known of the danger. He knows he's handling a real gun, that he acted with willful disregard. He pointed the muzzle at Helena Hutchins, cocked the hammer, pressed the trigger without ensuring there was no live ammo in the gun. That his act caused the death of Hutchins, and it occurred on October 21st, 2021. Both indisputable facts. This is the only relevant question and facts in this case. Let's look at what's not relevant. How First Assistant Director David Halls feels about the event, who he thinks was at fault or not at fault. Irrelevant is how Director Joel Souza felt about the event. What's irrelevant is how Props Master Sarah Zachary felt about the event. You see anything in the jury instruction on involuntary manslaughter about how other people on the scene felt about the event? Really irrelevant, how producer Ryan Smith felt about the scope of Baldwin's authority as a co-producer of the film. Is that part of the jury instruction on involuntary manslaughter? Irrelevant whether David Halls also contributed recklessly to Helena Hutchins' death, and whether armorer Hannah Gutierrez also contributed recklessly to Helena Hutchins' death. We've determined as a matter of law they both did. They've both been found guilty in the death of Helena Hutchins. David Halls by plea, Hannah Gutierrez by conviction by a jury. But it's irrelevant to Alec Baldwin's own criminal liability. There's nothing in the jury instructions about whether other people were also reckless. Also irrelevant, how the Rust script supervisor described the event in her 911 call. She referred to it as an accident. Does that control the legal outcome in this case? That someone else felt it was an accident, described it as an accident? Also irrelevant. Anything the first set of prosecutors did on this case prior to resigning from the case, because they resigned from the case. And it's irrelevant what the first indictment against Baldwin might have said or done, because that indictment's been dismissed. Whatever errors might have been committed there, the slate was wiped clean. New prosecutors were assigned, and a new grand jury indictment was secured. Also irrelevant is how much money is being spent on this prosecution. That's not part of the jury instruction. Also irrelevant, what some unsourced statements attributed anonymously to the prosecution have been published in the media. The defense claims that Carrie Morrissey has said she's trying to make this a teachable moment for Alec Baldwin. That's why she's prosecuting him. There's no evidence she ever said that. It's a completely anonymous, unsourced claim in a Hollywood media outlet. Also irrelevant, any press releases published by SAG after Baldwin's newest indictment. So in February of this year, SAG would put out a press release saying, hey, we know what this firearm safety bulletin #1 says, but we don't feel like Alec Baldwin should be held responsible. Is that part of the jury instructions? How they felt about it? The relevant legal question is this. Again, the jury instruction, the New Mexico jury instruction on involuntary manslaughter. All the rest of that nonsense is hand waving and smoke and mirrors, and as we'll see, histrionic.